In this video, I'm going to be discussing May 15th and the all-important CPI announcement. That's the focus of the video. Let's get into it and talk through all the details. Alright, as I mentioned, May 15th, which happens to be Wednesday, this is the date in which we're going to be getting the all-important CPI announcement. Bright and early, 8:30 a.m. East Coast time, we'll be getting that announcement, and this is the Consumer Price Index, also known as the inflation data, that we do get once per month, generally right around the middle of each month, and it is for the prior month, so this one will be inflation data for the month of April, letting us know what is really going on with this inflation. And as we dive into the report, we will clearly see how inflation is still rising on things like food and shelter and transportation and healthcare, things like this. Meanwhile, we'll probably get a bunch of people coming out suggesting inflation is actually going down. Well, here's the situation. Since early 2021, right after they printed a fresh $1.9 trillion with the American Rescue Plan, we've been seeing inflation going up very, very rapidly, as it topped out in 2022 in June of 9.1%. That was very, very high, and it's been slowly going down and oscillating right around this 3% range or so for the last several months here. Now remember, the Federal Reserve has been aggressively raising interest rates over the last couple years. In fact, the last couple meetings here, they've been pausing, but the whole point of them raising interest rates to basically to bring down this inflation, to reduce the appetite of borrowing and spending money, and that would lower inflation very slowly. Well, we can see here, we went from 9.1% back in June of 2022 down to where we are now, right around that 3% range again, and they want to bring it down to about 2 to 2.5% on the high end. So they've got a long way to go here. Even though it seems like only about 1% to go, it's still going to take a very long time to bring it back down that extra 1%. The first, 6% or so was relatively easy for them to bring that down, just raising interest rates. And remember, interest rates are still sitting very, very high right now as the Federal Reserve is holding them up there. Now, again, why is that a big deal? Because it's costing all of us more money. If you're floating any balances or having any types of loans of any kind, if you're floating balances on a credit card right now, you know just as well as I do, it is very expensive to hold any type of credit out there right now, any type of debt on a credit card. When you're sitting at, say, 21.5% or 22% interest rates on a credit card, it is very, very expensive, and it is hard to pay those things down when you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a monthly basis on a little bit of credit that you may have out there, okay? Just saying, from personal experience, it is very difficult to get ahead these days, okay? So as a result of that, we need to continue watching this inflation data. Now, the Federal Reserve just had a meeting not that long ago. In fact, on the 1st of the month, they had their meeting, right? The next FOMC meeting is going to be coming on June 12th. So that's out, what is it, about a month from now? June 12th will be their next meeting, and again, that's going to be very influential. So this inflation data that we're having coming out right now on Wednesday is going to be very important, because this will lead into what the Federal Reserve likely does with their next meeting, again, in about a month from right now as well, okay? So the inflation data, regardless of what we have to say, this is still very important. However, I want to point this out there really quickly, because we continue to say, oh, this inflation data, it's so very important right now. You're right. Right now, it's important, and it's a talking point as of right now, especially leading into what's going on in November as well, okay? However, I can tell you this much. If we see a major economic recession, a major economic contraction that many people are calling on in the second half of 2024, okay? A lot of people continue to come out and suggest we're going to see a major crash and burn of the economy in the second half of 2024, and they're going to call it a recession, okay? We will see what happens here, okay? We don't really know yet, but if we see this major crash and burn, even though they continue to say, oh, inflation's really high right now and blah, 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 all this stuff like this, okay? Yes, it is still relatively high, but if we see a major economic contraction, they will not even talk about inflation whatsoever. They won't care one bit about inflation. So I know a lot of you here in the community reach out. I see the comments down below asking, are we going to get more stimulus checks? Are they going to send out another one? What about monthly checks? What about $2,000? What about $1,400? What about $1,000? All kinds of things like this, okay? Here's the thing. As of right now, there's, really no need for that at the moment, okay? Now, it totally depends. Again, you might be thinking, but wait, there's a need for it. I totally agree with you. Depends on the situation, okay? They look at it from an economic standpoint. You've heard me say that many times before in other videos, which is, even though we sit here and ask them, we beg, we plead, we ask, whatever, and we ask them for additional stimulus checks or something like this, it really does not come down to that. It comes down to the health of the economy. That is how they determine the likelihood of stimulus checks going out. So when it comes down to it, even though they continue to tell us that all the stimulus checks that we got in 2020 and 2021, the $1,200, the $600, and the $1,400, all of that contributed to all the inflation that we saw. I don't know about that, okay? Remember, they printed $6 trillion in the course of 12 months. I don't really know how $850 billion or so, which encompass the stimulus checks, I don't know how that's really going to cause all the inflation when there's an extra, call it, $5.15 trillion that was unaccounted for. I don't really know if $850 billion is really going to cause all that inflation when there was well over $5 trillion that they didn't really tell us about, right? But anyway, my point is, in the event that we see this next major recession, major economic contraction, whatever happens to be, whatever we want to call it, inflation is going to be an old story. They won't care less about inflation. That will not even be a concern on anybody's mind to say, oh, we're worried about printing $1 trillion or plowing it out in the form of stimulus, stuff like this. They won't care at all. The whole idea then will be to revive the economy, to revitalize, to pump the bubble up, things like this again, just like we're seeing right now with this massive situation that we're dealing with, okay? So anyway, this is why the inflation data is so important. Even though a lot of us, think like, who cares? It's just the inflation data. It's not all that accurate anyway. You're probably right. It's probably not all that accurate. In fact, you hear me come back all the time in separate videos where I'm talking about the details of the inflation reports, and we point out, hey, look at that. Food went up another 0.3%. Oh, look at that. Transportation went up. Gas went up. Shelter went up 0.6%. Healthcare went up another 0.4% or something like this. And we continue to look through all the categories, and we see that prices are still rising on a lot of different things. So this is translating into basically the health of the finances of the American people on a regular basis. And again, I know that a lot of you here in the community who are low income, fixed income, Social Security beneficiaries, SSDI, SSI, VA, spousal, survivors, beneficiaries, it's a rough time out there. Look at any of the surveys. Look at any of the reports. Look at any of the studies that I've brought to you in all of these videos over the last couple of years here. We continue to see it's a rough situation out there. People living on a small fixed income benefit are really, really taking the brunt of all this right now. And again, it's a bad situation. That's just the reality of the situation, right? And again, I don't need to sit here and tell you this. Look at your own finances. How has life been going the last couple of years here, right? Have you been able to pay all the utilities on time? Have you been able to put enough food on the table? Have you been able to cover the rent on a monthly basis, as it's needed? Again, I can't sit here and speak for everybody, but I think we all recognize this has been a very, very rough situation. So the situation comes down to Wednesday, okay? This is the 15th and the date in which the CPI, Consumer Price Index, will be coming out. It'll be interesting. It's going to be one of these reports we will need to continue watching to see what are the trends here. Is inflation trending back up? The last couple of reports here that we've seen over the last few months, we've seen inflation actually trending back up a little bit, okay? Not good. Wrong way. It's supposed to be going down, and here we're seeing it going back up, or at least not going down, right? Big problem. Either way, I'm going to continue watching it, but this is what I have for you as of right now. I'll continue to bring you the details. Again, please subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet. Share the video with your friends on social media. There's a big share button next to the subscribe button down below the video. Otherwise, go back and check out any of the other thousands of videos here on the channel, including those that I have for you down below in the description. Hand-selected those ones for you, as well as the hand-selected videos in the top of the comment section as well as the thousands of videos in the video library, or the ones that you've seen on your screen popping up a couple times throughout this video, and those that you see right now on your screen as well. Check those videos out. Have a nice day. Thanks for joining me. Truly appreciate it, and I'll catch you again later in the next video. Take care, and I'll see you.